First question, Iona, is when people first encounter your work, what do you hope they feel before they think?
A reaction. When they first encounter my work, I want them to have a reaction, and I want it to be authentic and they feel something really deeply inside them they can't even believe, but obviously they relate to it in some way and they don't even know why yet before they think. And then maybe they'll do the processing afterwards, but I want a real, raw, authentic reaction, because my work is about real life experiences, a lot of it, not all of it, but most of it. And if they can feel something, whether it's positive or negative, predominantly probably negative, that's a win-win for me. So that's all I want. Real, raw, authenticity, not pretense. Not, oh, I'm going to think, well, how do I feel about this? How do I feel about this piece? What does it make me feel? Just have a fucking reaction, basically. And then you've done your job, basically, as an artist. For me, anyway. Others may be different. Yeah, that's what I'd answer that question.
Is rolling, and the next question is, if your paintings had a sound, what would it be?
It would be like the Titanic hitting the tip of an iceberg, and then the rest of the noise that comes after that, which could be, some people are like disillusioned, they don't know what's going on, other people know what's going on and it's terrifying. Or it could be the movement of, for example, in some of the landscape ones, of the elements, sort of trees, rivers, waterfalls, that sort of thing. In some of the more like personal, deeper ones, you know, so the noise of a chalkboard going, it's a bit like uncomfortable to hear, unsettling. And the colours, I think, because they're so toxic, can also help give that. So the toxicity of the colours, the acid greens or like neon pinks or whatever, it's very jarring, kind of uncomfortable, I think would be the phrase. Uncomfortable and disturbing, a sort of slightly disturbing sound, but also an intrigue of, I kind of want to hear more, you know, what is this sound bringing to me? And also interesting because when you first look at some of them, I think it can look very beautiful and pretty and cool, you know, so you'd be like, okay, that's fun, and then when you actually look at it properly, it's like, this ain't so fun anymore, I don't like this, let's walk away. And I think the sounds, yeah, it would be sort of like, I don't know, scary. I mean, like, you know, that film, what's it called, where it's basically like you hear these sort of, it could be like from like silence to Auschwitz, sort of silence, that kind of thing. It's quite it's and also very loud, very loud. So in first glance, intrigued, and then incredibly loud with all the colours and everything like that. It makes it like suddenly like an emotion, like a volcano erupting or something. Does that answer the question?
It does. For me, it's like silent screams.
Silent screams. It's like, yeah, that lures you in with the cool colours and the whatever, and then suddenly you watch it and it's like the silent screams from internal within. It's basically like in a dungeon, like trying to claw your way out, being buried alive and trying to get yourself out. Silent screams. Yeah, I would say Auschwitz comes to mind, weirdly. For example, you can feel, a lot of them you feel fenced in, claustrophobic, you just like want to get out, you know what I mean? It's sort of like leave this alone. There's a lot of them walking in some direction. It's like you're trying to get away and it's screaming, and you just want to silence the noise and the sound, but there's so much noise that you can't silence it, so it's just sort of, yeah, you just want to get out, basically. Just get out. Fenced in, and skeleton lady, but it's a lot more than that. It's basically having your soul sucked out of you, and you can literally feel it on you. If it was a noise, it would be like it would be, get me away from these people. I would just want to get out. I want to get out. I want to get out. I want to get out. Get me away. Get me away. Get me away. You know, that sort of, almost like a, you know, when you hear a baby cry, it's like, get me, stop it. Let's stop this noise. It's like, please, get me out. Get me out. But you're very vulnerable in it as well. So they're very vulnerable. So you can see this vulnerability. So in that sound, it's also quite weak, if that makes sense. But with what's in the painting, because obviously I can't show you it right now, you can very much see that that there's a lot of rage, a lot of fear, a lot of anger, a lot of like, just get me out of here. Not celebrity get me out of here, but get me out of this fucking canvas. I want to get away. There's a lot actually like that. And also it's sort of, I use colour a lot to kind of, it's very claustrophobic. There's a lot going on, and you're using very, very, you know, particularly with spray paint, you're using a lot of neon colours, which people find quite jarring. You wouldn't necessarily, I like to use colours that you would never associate with each one, like neon green with red, or pink with, you know, I don't know, like a beautiful blue, and it's just bizarre. But I think that's sort of showing that there's so much loudness, and it's just so intense that it's like, please escape this. And it's not happy. Like, it's not a happy environment, although it lures you in because it's so sort of, with colours particularly, I think you can make a lot of noise with the colours you choose to use on art, whatever kind of form of art. Even like if you're setting a stage for acting or something, you know, if you're setting lights, if you're doing this, you create a mood. So colours are very much important for creating a mood, which creates a sound. And I know that, for instance, like a sound is sound is, it's one of our first of our five senses. So obviously you're lured in, and in the first 5 seconds you hear something, you normally hear a noise. You know what I mean? And I think colour helps massively with that. A lot of people think it's, the common misunderstanding they have is they think it's, well, it depends which type of, because I separate them, landscape to figurative, okay? So a lot of the figurative things, they think it's uncomfortable, so therefore why would they want to, I think it's uncomfortable to them because it's true. It's about, you know, a lot of it's about women empowerment, but in terms of sort of taking the piss out of basically Coco Chanel or Vogue, and the fact that beauty in women needs to be, they have to be this beautiful being. They have to, you know, people feel like young girls as young as, you know, 22 are doing Botox and things like this. So I think they find it quite jarring, and the fact that it is real. It's like showing you what actually holding up a mirror to what your children or your daughter or your granddaughter or your friend feels at such a young age, insecurity. But I show it in terms of like a very strong woman, even though in the background it says sort of voiceless and like it's very unhappy. So it's sort of a lot about women that I think people find quite uncomfortable, including women, it's just everybody. I think other things they misinterpret is, for example, I remember one of my art shows, it was really interesting, there was this, I'm just going to say this, why not, because there was this, he sort of a load of people there. You know, they turn up and there were landscapes. And in the trees, I actually was painting. It was a very beautiful landscape. It was snowy, blue. But in the trees, it was the shape of a vagina, like inside. And people came up to me and they were like, oh, I love this painting. Where is it from? Where did you see it? Did you paint it from life? You know, and I just sussed up the person that I was speaking to. You know, it could be somebody who worked in finance or somebody who worked in a crowd, I don't know, you know. Sussed them up, and I just gave them this whole spiel of a story that I thought they would like, so that they would buy it. And they completely misinterpreted the fact that it was about female genitalia, basically. And actually that female genitalia in like war-torn areas, you know, for example, are completely ripped out of a female. They have no human rights, literally zero. Women are treated like shit. And they didn't really understand the painting at all. And there's just one in mind, but there's many. But and there's this man that was looking at it, said, oh, it's glamorous, it's beautiful, I love it. I think it would fit perfect in my, whatever he said, living room or something, or like drawing room, which I don't even know what that means. And I just said, oh, well, you know, it was in the Alps, all this, all that. I've never been to the bloody Alps, you know what I mean? And he ended up buying it, but he has no idea the real connotation to it. And I think that was really interesting for me, because he's got this in his drawing room that he shows his friends or whatever. And the real connotation is actually ironic, because he's actually taken a really dark piece, thought that it was beautiful, when actually it means so many other things. And it's more about protecting violence against women in countries where they, you know, abuse, well, a lot. Women are abused a lot. So safety for women is a huge part of my art, and sometimes people get it, but most of the time they don't. They think, oh, it's just a statement piece, and it's not a statement piece. It's real life. Like, this is what's happening. And also I think a lot of people think that I like it, but I don't know where to put it in my house, kind of thing. And I'm like, well, whatever, who cares? I don't care. Does it make you feel something? Does it make you tell? A lot of people are uncomfortable by a lot of my art. Other people think it's cool because I make elements in it look cool, like a necklace saying lovely as fuck, you know what I mean, or something like that. So it takes away from the strength of what actually the person's going through. It makes it more like commercial in a way. But in the end of the day, it's a very bold statement. It's basically saying, fuck off, leave me alone, I don't want anything to do with you. We as women don't want anything to do with what is happening. And I think it's even women take advantage of women. It's not just, it's so mad. There's a whole story I could go into at some point later, where, you know, something awful happens to a woman, let's say she's sexually assaulted or raped, and you generally, like, if you need to speak out, the police make it, you know, it doesn't even go to court. Police make it at police level. They could even literally be filmed. I know a story of my friend. She was filmed. She had the footage of being raped. And I'm probably going on a tangent here, but the police were like, no, that's not enough evidence. The man said it was consensual, therefore it was consensual, and it never went to court. So all of these figures of, you know, only 6% of rape cases are actually sentenced is a whole load of bollocks, because actually none of them go to the CPS. They're just, the police are made a judge and jury. And I think people find it very uncomfortable to see a painting with a very strong woman basically going, fuck you, and just carrying on with her life with all this sort of mayhem behind her. And I think that's what people don't understand. They just think, oh, that looks cool or interesting, but they don't realise the connotations, the reality of what goes on behind it, from multiple stories I've heard of awful things that happen to women, particularly in London at the moment, but all over the world. So, yeah, I would say they don't, because it's quite fun, it's quite pop arty, it's sort of a mixture, you know, there's a lot of spray paint. They're like, oh, cool, dripping spray paint, that's cool, you know, but actually they don't really see the full story of what I'm saying. Yeah, like, fuck you to the world. Women have got so much pressures on them, you know, like every single woman, you know, you've got when you get to like 30, they're like, why haven't you had children? Why are you not married? Why are you not with somebody? You know, why are you, time's ticking, you know, ticking time bomb, blah, 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 blah. And also there's many men out there that believe, I'm not saying all men at all, I'm not generalising at all, but a lot that, like, for example, I've encountered and I know my friends have encountered are like, oh, women peak at age 27. Shocking. Women peak at... For me, I was my most beautiful when I was 30 to 33. Like, absolutely. Like, I generally felt that. Like, at 27, I was a mess. But also, it's sort of interesting because it's sort of this sort of very misogynistic way to look at women. It's like, oh, yeah, their bodies change and this and that. And it's like, yeah, we're women, you know, we're getting older, but then so are you guys. But then there's all these other things, the society pressures, like so many people, like I was talking about earlier, is this huge thing with... even I know friends of mine's partners really push them into having sort of Botox, they're getting wrinkles under their eyes. You know, it's like, age gracefully. Surely that should be fine. Men can. Why can't women? Why do we have to sort of stay, like, we have to be forever young? You know what I mean? Everyone wants to be forever young, but just age gracefully. And there's this huge societal pressure on women. You know, let's say you're not ready. Let's say you want a career and you're really, really, really keen on your job. And you actually don't, you know, and then suddenly there's this song called Send in the Clowns, and it's basically about this woman. The story is about this woman that, you know, suddenly she decided she wanted to settle down, and the man that she was absolutely in love with, all the men that she was in love with, they've all moved on and they're with younger women, because now she's considered old. And I think it's really interesting, the song, because it's really sad. It's very true. It's like suddenly, let's say you're in a job and you're aged, I don't know, 37, men who are 40 or 44 or 45 are going to look for somebody who's like 27. And it's just how it is. Not all. I'm really not generalising. I'm saying my experience. And then suddenly you're like, oh. And then you start thinking, oh, shit, maybe I shouldn't have done this career. Maybe I should have done that thing and settled down, like, you know, those people that do when they're 24, rather than living a life, having a whole wealth of life experience, meeting so many different people and having a wonderful free time. A lot of the time I have had a couple of really bad relationships with men where they wanted to control me and control my art and not want me to do work and not want me to do anything and not be independent. And I think that shows a lot in why I'm so, with the paintings particularly of women and the sort of portraiture more paintings, they are so loud and they are so strong because I was silenced a lot. So I was silenced a lot when I was younger. I was silenced at school. I hated school. I was silenced a lot of my life, and then I started finding my voice, and then I found myself being sort of silenced again by society. And yeah, that's why they're so loud. It's like, no. And also, it's so easy to put on a front, you know, to put on a, like, I remember even when I was younger, I was called Dusty. I've no idea why, but I was. And it was basically a mask. It was a mask for me because I could just pretend everything was fine. I didn't have to be sensitive. I didn't have to be this. I would just say yes, or nothing would hurt me, you know what I mean? It was like, but actually when I realised, you know, this was all like a alter ego. And the real me is somebody who's incredibly sensitive and very caring and very observant and sort of very creative. I like and, you know, I actually like meeting lots of different people from all walks of life, from all over the world, because you learn things, and you learn things that aren't just from your, you know, your little bubble.
Do you see yourself first as an artist, a storyteller, or a provocateur?
Storyteller. Definitely. I mean, I used to make stories. I was quite a lonely child, very lonely in fact. And I've always loved my own company, but I also need to obviously be around other people. But it does drain me sometimes. But like, when I was young, I used to make all these stories up. I mean, I would go out on my own pretending to be Huckleberry Finn. I used to like make mud pies from, like, you know, Oliver Twist, like all on my own. I actually used to, it was so sweet. I had, obviously I was very young. I'm talking like 5. I had all these teddies, 6 maybe, and I genuinely believed they would come alive if I left the room. So I'd pretend, I'd shut the door and then I'd sneakily open it again. And I'd have all these stories for every single one. I used to be constantly telling my family. I'd be writing poems, I'd be writing stories, I'd be writing this, and I constantly, my poor family was so bored of me, but I'd come down, and it was like sort of before we were meant to eat for like, I don't know, like tea time or whatever, and I'd just be like, I have this story, and I'd just basically reenact this story to them. I'd write one woman plays, and I'd made them all sit in a sort of like, as if it was like a, so funny. I mean, I look back on it, I'm like, God, poor them. But make them sit in sort of like they were the audience, and then perform this sort of thing. But I always drew, I was sketching from a very young age. I had started with actually poetry, but then I realised sort of paint was around and things like that, and I just, well, mainly with pencils, whatever, I just sketch. I remember at school, for example, I'm meant to be learning, I was just stood doodling, you know, whatever, wasn't really listening at all, partly because the teacher was so boring, but also what we were learning was so dull. I was just like, actually, I just want to like go into my imagination. Was a huge part of my childhood, and still is to this day. Always been so vivid. In fact, you know, that sort of thing is so mad. I'm going to say this is so out of context, but for example, when someone tells me they've had a blood test, I literally feel the pain because I'm so freaked out by needles. I feel the pain. I'm like, oh my God, don't tell me. Or if somebody's like had an accident, you know, nothing too severe, just like a basic, like someone tripped and sprained their ankle, it's like, oh my God, I feel it, because my imagination just goes mental. And I remember like there was this one time when I was 3, or 4, and I was very, very young, and I remember crying at night, and I woke up my mum, and she made me sit in the bathroom, and I remember it so vividly. I was sitting on her lap, and I said to her, I'm so frightened of dying, I don't want to die, it's going to hurt, I'm really scared, is it going to hurt? She said, everyone has to die, you're going to die, but you're not going to die now. And I was like, but I'm so scared of it. I was crying, because all I could imagine that night was like, death is obviously the unknown, so therefore I was just so terrified, and my imagination just went absolutely insane. I remember there was obviously other things my imagination did, where I actually got told off for a lot, because I'd write these stories, and apparently they were very inappropriate stories to write when I was 8 years old. My mother read them, and I also kept all these diaries that were most of them were like real life, keeping a like a diary of my life, but a lot of them were like made up situations that I just sort of would like enjoy like kind of doing, and it was all from my imagination. And then obviously there was this one day, I remember it very vividly, I think I was 15, nearly 16, and I had written already 30 diaries in this space of time of my being able to write until I was like almost 16. And my cousin and my mum had read all my diaries, and it was so personal, and it was so humiliating and so embarrassing for me, and I felt like I just wanted the world to swallow me up. And I never wrote a diary, or never really wrote anything really since, unless I was like forced to. But that was really sad. So then that's what led me into painting, because I could express myself through art and through colour. Particularly, every colour is my mood. So red could be anger, and people say red's for love. No, for me it's anger. Blue is meant to be peaceful. For me it's like eerie, scary, you know. But you can change it. You can change it. You know, it could be very romantic, sort of. I don't know. But like, yeah, I use colour to show an emotion. It's not necessarily the emotion that people genuinely associate a colour with. You know, everyone says, well, red's for like romance, for Valentine's Day. I'm like, no, it's not. It's much darker than that. Blue's for this, green's for that. You know, it's like, no. You can make, green isn't just a landscape or a tree. There's so many different colours to it, purples, you know, whatever. So I don't know if that answers the question. I went on a bit of a tangent, but there's more I could say on that. But yeah, I would say my imagination was pretty big, so I would say storyteller.
What did beauty mean to you as a child?
Beauty. For me, as a child, I remember going. It's not really got to do with. I mean, there's so many things that I could just take this in so many directions. So just bear with me. So I remember going to watch at aged 7, I think. Henry V. My mum dragged me there to the Globe Theatre in London, and obviously it's open and it's Shakespeare. It goes on for 3.5 hours, and for some reason I was absolutely mesmerised by Mark Rylance's performance, and I just could not understand why. And I just was so blown away. For some reason, that obviously for me, it was just beautiful. But then if we go back to actually, I remember when I was really young, and I was born in Singapore, so I grew up in Singapore for a while. I remember the smell of curry. It felt very real. I remember our house was on stilts. I remember we had this dog called Brownie that used to take, there were snakes that would come into the house and he'd like get rid of them, and obviously I was scared of snakes, and so that was beautiful for me, an animal protecting me. I think then we moved to sort of countryside area. Well, we moved to London, but then moved to the countryside, and I think it was sort of just peace, no noise. There's so much noise in London. Oh my god, everyone's like on a rat race. Everyone's been like, what do you do, what do you do, and they always want to impress, and it's like so boring. It's like, so for me, just having no noise, that's beautiful. I think also when I lived in Italy, I went to live in Italy when I was around, I must have been about 15, and I saw these amazing sculptures, and it was so interesting. I thought they were so beautiful, but then when you look closer, there's all these cracks in them, and some of them are missing like an arm or a leg or whatever, but it's still so beautiful. You know what I mean? They're stunning. For some bizarre reason, I thought they were just, how do you create that? And I think I very much felt like an ugly duckling when I was young. I mean, I was told it very bad. I was bullied very badly I went to many schools. Oh my God, long list. Not because I wanted to, just because I was casted from one to the next, and it was I was asked to leave from many of them, partly because I just hated school. I didn't understand why I needed to be around all these people that I didn't like and have to be friends with them. And yeah, I remember I invented, when I was very young, I must have been 8, I invented an imaginary friend, which I knew was imaginary. I wasn't mad. I absolutely knew invented this imaginary friend, and it was called Geronimo, and he was a unicorn. So every night when I was made to go to bed, I was sent to boarding school when I was 7, and I hated it. I absolutely was so confused. I was very alone. I felt very frightened. Didn't make any friends. Didn't like them. So I had invented in my mind, in my imagination, this unicorn called Geronimo, and he was white. And I just remember at night I'd go to a window when everyone else was asleep in their dorms or whatever, and I knew he wasn't real, but I made him so vivid in my mind. I just want to stroke him, and he basically comforted me. But I was fascinated in loads of different things that I thought were beautiful. I never really thought that... I felt like energy, people's energy. I've always felt that. If you meet somebody and that energy is so wonderful, you're like, God, you're such a stunning person. But if you can meet the most, like nowadays, you know, what's standardly meant to be good looking, you can meet them and they're an absolute fucking arsehole. And you're just like, God, you're so ugly. You're so ugly. Even though they could be aesthetically what you ever called like maybe a model or something, it's just like, nah. So it's energies, I think. And I think energies are in everything, with people, different places. You could even be at a lake and just feel the energy of like the water. So that sort of thing is what I find beautiful when I was younger. I never thought people necessarily beautiful. I think I found other forms of beauty that was a bit different, and safety with that as well. But I definitely, I was always bullied about my looks and how I was, so I just sort of, and obviously I didn't really like people at that age. I found, because of the situation I was in, the people I found very competitive against each other. I felt they were inauthentic. I thought they were fake, and I felt they were just being friends because they were shoved into an environment, and therefore they were like, yeah, like, we're going to pretend to like each other. And it's so funny because, like, seeing them grow up over the years, they've still got that competitiveness with each other. That's not friendship. So friendship is like, you're not trying to have one over on the other person. It's organic, it's natural. But yeah, anyway, I don't know if that answered the question, but I hope it did.